It happens in the smallest moments. Someone laughs at your joke and you think they're just being nice. A friend texts to check in and you assume they probably need something from you. Someone says they love you, and deep in your chest, a quiet voice whispers, "Not if they really knew me." You're surrounded by evidence that people care, but none of it reaches you. It slides off like rain on glass, and you spend your life waiting for the other shoe to drop, for them to see the truth, for the moment they finally realize you're not worth staying for. This isn't just imposter syndrome. This isn't just low self-esteem. This is something deeper, older, and far more devastating. This is the psychology of a child who learned that love was conditional, that acceptance had to be earned, that the real you was too much, too little, or just fundamentally wrong. And today, we're going inside that wound. Because if you don't understand where this belief came from, you'll spend your entire life performing for people who have already chosen you, pushing away the love you're so desperate for, and proving to yourself over and over that you were right all along. Nobody could actually like the real you. But here's what we're going to unpack. That belief isn't the truth. It's a scar. And scars can be understood, felt, and slowly, carefully healed. Let's start with what's really happening psychologically. When you can't believe people like you, you're not being realistic or humble. You're operating from what psychologists call a negative core belief. It's a deeply embedded conviction about yourself, usually formed in childhood, that acts as a filter for all incoming information. And here's how it works. Your brain isn't neutral. It's constantly looking for evidence to confirm what it already believes. This is called confirmation bias, and when your core belief is, "I'm unlikable," your brain becomes a detective searching for proof. Someone compliments you, your brain dismisses it. They're just being polite. Someone forgets to text back. Your brain seizes on it. "See? I knew they didn't really care." You're not interpreting reality. You're interpreting reality through the lens of a wound. And that wound was carved long before you had the language to understand it. Most people who struggle to believe they're liked didn't grow up with overt abuse. It was much subtler than that. Maybe your parents loved you, but only when you performed well, when you got good grades, behaved perfectly, made them look good. Affection was a reward for achievement. So you learned that your value wasn't inherent. It was earned. Maybe affection was inconsistent. Sometimes you were adored, and sometimes you were ignored, and you never knew which version of them you'd get. So you learned that love is unreliable, conditional, a prize you might win or lose depending on factors you couldn't control. This creates a deep-seated anxiety that love could be withdrawn at any moment. Or maybe you were the sensitive one, the one who felt too much, cried too easily, needed too much reassurance, and the message, spoken or unspoken, was clear. You're too much. Calm down. Stop being so needy. And so you learned the most devastating lesson a child can learn, that the real you, the messy, needy, emotional you, is unacceptable. That love requires a mask. That being yourself means being alone. This is called conditional regard in psychology, and it doesn't just hurt in the moment. It programs your nervous system. It teaches you that acceptance is not a given. It's something you have to earn, manage, and maintain through perfect behavior. And here's the cruelest part. You internalize it. You become your own harshest critic. You police yourself before anyone else can reject you. You shrink, you edit, you perform. You become so good at being likable that you forget how to be yourself. But deep down, you know you're performing. You know the version people see isn't the whole truth. And that creates a horrible trap, because even when people do like you, you can't accept it. You think, they only like the version I'm showing them. If they knew the real me, the anxious, insecure, messy, broken parts, they'd leave. So their affection never lands. It never reaches the part of you that needs it most, because that part is hidden, locked away, convinced it's unlovable. This is the psychology of someone who can't believe they're liked. You're not being paranoid. You're protecting yourself from the abandonment you've already survived once. Your brain is saying, if I never believe they like me, I'll never be devastated when they leave. But here's what that protective strategy costs you. You spend your entire life emotionally alone, even in rooms full of people who care about you. You refuse the very thing you're starving for. And worst of all, you start creating the rejection you fear. Because when you can't accept love, you push it away. You test people. You withdraw when they get close. You sabotage good things because waiting for abandonment feels worse than causing it yourself. At least then you're in control. Psychologists call this a self-fulfilling prophecy. You believe you're unlikable, so you act in ways that eventually make people pull away, which confirms your belief that you were unlikable all along. It's not because you were right, it's because you never gave them a chance to prove you wrong. Now let's talk about how this belief shows up in adulthood, quietly, insidiously, in ways you might not even recognize. You might overfunction in friendships, always the one reaching out, planning, checking in, because if you stop, maybe they'll disappear. And you can't risk finding out they wouldn't have reached out first. You might dismiss compliments immediately. Someone says you're talented and you deflect. Oh, anyone could do this. Because accepting it feels like lying, like tricking them into thinking you're better than you are. You might apologize constantly for existing, for needing, for taking up space. Because part of you still believes that your presence is an imposition, that people are tolerating you rather than choosing you. Do you ever find yourself obsessively replaying conversations, searching for the exact moment you might have said something wrong? Are you constantly convinced that any awkward pause means your friends are secretly reconsidering your entire relationship? These aren't just quirky personality traits. They're survival strategies you learned as a child, a time when love felt fragile and conditional, a time when being your authentic self felt incredibly risky. You learned that acceptance wasn't a given. It had to be earned over and over every single day. And here's the most heartbreaking part. You've probably built a wonderful life for yourself. You likely have real friendships, people who genuinely love you, but you can't feel it. It is like standing in the warm sun, but being convinced you suis, we're still freezing in the cold. Why? Because the core beliefs we form in childhood don't just update themselves with new evidence. Your adult mind can logically know you're cared for, but your inner child still feels fundamentally unlovable. This is where the real healing begins. It is not about thinking your way out of it or collecting more proof that you're likable. It's about turning inward toward that child who first learned love was conditional and telling them what you learned back then made sense to survive, but it's not the whole truth. That child needed to believe they were the problem. The alternative, that the adults who were supposed to love them unconditionally simply couldn't, was too terrifying to face. Blaming yourself gave you a sense of control. If it's your fault, then maybe you can fix it. Maybe you can finally perform well enough to earn the love you so desperately need. But you can never earn what should have been given freely. And you can't fix a problem that was never your responsibility in the first place. So the question isn't, how do I become more likable? You were always likable. The real question is, how do I let love in when my entire nervous system was trained to see it as a threat? And that is incredibly tough work. It means allowing yourself to feel the grief you were never permitted to feel. The grief of realizing you might have spent years, even decades, pushing away the very connection you were starving for. The grief of understanding that you were lovable all along, but you just couldn't see it through the lens of your past. This healing journey means sitting with the intense fear that if you stop performing, stop managing every interaction, and stop trying to earn love through perfect behavior, everyone will leave. And then, slowly and carefully, you start to test that fear. You show up a little more honestly. You let someone see you when you're anxious, or messy, or needy. And you make the profound discovery that they don't run away. It also means practicing something that can feel almost impossible. Receiving. When someone gives you a compliment, instead of immediately deflecting it, just pause. Take a breath. Say, thank you. Let the warmth of their words sit in your body, even if it feels uncomfortable. This is how you teach your nervous system that praise doesn't have to be earned or explained away. You start to recognize that the critical voice inside, the one whispering, "They don't really like you," isn't your wisdom speaking. It's your trauma, and trauma lies. It tells you that safety is an illusion, that trust is naive, and that love is always, always conditional. If you grew up believing that love was something you had to earn, this message is for you. Maybe you were praised for getting good grades, being quiet, or always putting others first. You learned that love was conditional, a prize for your performance. So now, as an adult, you might find yourself constantly striving, perfecting, and pleasing, all in an endless quest to finally be worthy of love. But real love isn't earned through performance. It's not a reward for good behavior. It's what happens when someone sees you, really sees you, with all your flaws, your fears, and your messy, beautiful humanity, and chooses to stay anyway. Maybe you've never experienced that, or maybe you have, but you just couldn't let yourself believe it was real. Either way, it's time to stop waiting for someone else to convince you that you're worth loving, because no amount of external validation can heal the part of you that simply doesn't believe it. You have to become the person who finally turns to your inner child and says, "You were always enough. The problem was never you, and I promise, I'm not leaving." This is the heart of what we call reparenting. It's not just a buzzword, it's a daily practice. It's about meeting your own needs for reassurance, for validation, and for unconditional acceptance, instead of constantly seeking them from others. It's learning to self-soothe when that old fear of abandonment rises up. It's reminding yourself, this fear is from the past. The people in my life now have shown up for me repeatedly. It's safe for me to be myself. You need to recognize that the part of you that can't believe people genuinely like you isn't trying to sabotage you. It's trying to protect you from the deep pain of abandonment you've already survived. You can honor that protective instinct while gently teaching it a new truth. That was then, and this is now. We are safe to try something different. So if you're someone who struggles to believe that people actually like you, please hear this. Your disbelief isn't proof that you're unlovable. It's proof that you were hurt by people who should have loved you unconditionally, but couldn't. Their failure was never your fault, and their limitations are not your destiny. You are not too much. You are not too little. You are not fundamentally broken or unworthy of love. You are simply someone whose trust was betrayed early and often. And now, you are doing the hardest, bravest work there is, learning to trust again, not blindly and not recklessly, but carefully, slowly, with people who have earned it, with people who show up, who stay, who see your mess and don't flinch. And maybe, just maybe, you'll start to believe what they've been trying to tell you all along, that you were always worth knowing, always worth keeping, always, always worth loving. Not because you earned it, but simply because you exist. And that has always been more than enough.